was really beyond my wildest imagination. The first thing I asked myself was, are there people still alive?
It was a very sad experience to see people hopeless, lost, traumatized, and didn't even have the energy to speak.
There wasn't even apparent chaos when I arrived within a couple of days afterwards, because it was such a shocking disaster that everyone was stunned, really.
The Asian tsunami wiped out thousands of villages and towns in one of the worst humanitarian disasters the world has ever known. More than 200,000 people were killed. Millions were displaced and in need of food, water, and shelter.
Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, India, the Maldives, all suffered very serious destruction. The waves reached as far as Somalia and Kenya in Africa. No one was prepared for anything like this, and when the world woke up to it, we had a challenge of immeasurable proportion on our hands.
One flight with 15 people.
The World Food Programme's Charlie Higgins was one of the first UN personnel to arrive to what has become known as the tsunami's ground zero, Aceh, Indonesia. Entire infrastructures were wiped out, leaving survivors in thousands of communities across the tsunami zone stranded. WFP took on the role of the lead logistics agency for the United Nations in the emergency, and in cooperation with national governments, was responsible for moving life-saving supplies for a wide range of UN agencies and humanitarian groups.
There was the beginnings of a massive aid operation arriving in Aceh. So there was sort of two sets of pressures. There was the pressure of a total lack of information about the situation on the ground, and then an enormous number of actors increasing almost exponentially every day.
Cargo ships were immediately diverted to the Indian Ocean, and tons of food were airlifted to the region. More than 300 staff were brought in from offices worldwide, and hundreds more recruited locally. National and international militaries played a crucial role, immediately sending personnel and equipment to the affected regions and moving food and medical supplies to hard-to-reach areas by air. WFP worked with the militaries not only to deliver food, but also to assess where the population centers were and where the needs were greatest. In the days that followed, the extent of the devastation became more clear. The waves had pulverized community after community all along the coastal zones.
I think this place was wiped off completely. The city, Chilang, had a population of around 7,000, we were told, before the tsunami. And after the tsunami, about 800 survivors were identified.
With no roads, airstrip, or working ports to transport food, the first WFP food deliveries to Chilang and the surrounding area were made by helicopters. A temporary field office and storage facilities had to be flown in and erected. Floating warehouses were anchored offshore to receive supplies that could only reach the battered shore by landing craft.
Meeting the survivors, the resilience, they were very keen on getting back with their lives. And for us who came in to help, I was seeing the enthusiasm with which all those that I've had the honor of working with went about with their job was, it was touching. It was touching.
There were millions who were affected by the tsunami in different ways. Lost their homes, lost loved ones, children who lost parents, whose whole infrastructure, families, communities, the whole infrastructure that they relied on for their day-to-day existence, their survival, was destroyed. their homes gone, schools gone, roads gone, bridges gone, jobs gone, for literally millions of people, particularly in Indonesia and Sri Lanka.
Within the first month, WFP delivered food for more than 1 million people in Myanmar, the Maldives, Thailand, Somalia, Sri Lanka, and Indonesia. That early response would not have been possible without key private sector partners. In Aceh, TNT assisted WFP's staff in field offices to help coordinate trucks, ships, and air support. In Sri Lanka, Unilever's national office provided critical logistics assistance for the distribution network, providing trucks and even chartering trains to get food to hard-hit areas. Food security is essential so that communities don't have to worry about their daily sustenance and can focus on rebuilding their lives and livelihoods.
pada tsunami උදරෙන් හාල් පිටිසි මේව ලැබුණනේ ඒවා ඉතින් අපි අපිට ඒක හොඳට ගියා ඉතින් කන්න බොන්න නෑ නේ දවස්වල ඉතින් ඒකෙන් තමයි මේ
Like Aceh, many of the coastal areas of Sri Lanka that were affected by the tsunami were already suffering under the pressures of the long-running civil conflict.
Here the malnutrition is very higher level comparing to the Sri Lankan national status. So we provide this corn soya blend, that is a fortified food, to our beneficiaries. This year after the tsunami we have expanded the program.
And it is also true that after the tsunami there has not been an outbreak of disease and no one died of hunger, and people are actually in the process of recovering now, so much so that 60% of the people displaced have now found livelihood and have actually found some place to live.
In Indonesia, survivors are still far from full recovery. Tens of thousands continue to live in temporary camps and shelters. But throughout the areas affected by the tsunami, there are countless examples of survivors helping themselves and each other. 24-year-old Fatin Hamama managed to outrun the massive waves that engulfed her city and claim 10 members of her extended family. Determined to be part of her province's recovery, she joined WFP as a food monitor and continues to track the needs of beneficiaries like 30-year-old Irma, a mother of two who still relies on the monthly food distributions to feed her family.
Cuma itulah kami satu-satunya minta kami balik pulang ke rumah dengan situasi dan keadaan yang betul-betul membaik seperti dulu lagi gitu. Tanpa ada gangguan baik dari maksudnya kayak dulu gempa gitu maupun dari orang gitu.
My first reason why I want to work for UN because I've been through the tsunami myself and I saw how people suffering from it. I really want to do something for them. Actually, this is harder for me because whenever they tell me their suffer, whenever they tell me their sadness, I'm not only listening, but I feel it. This is what actually this is make it harder, but I enjoy it because this is what I can do for them.
The WFP response never would have been possible. What we were able to do never could have been accomplished without WFP national staff. People working in our country offices who of course knew the country and the needs in the country better than any of the international staff could understand.
At the height of the operation in May 2005, WFP was feeding more than 2 million people. The spotlight that had so many donating so generously and responding so quickly was also demanding that assessments be made of the overall operation.
I think we thought that we would actually be further ahead. I think we thought that roads would be re-established, ports would be functioning again, markets would be up and running, people would be, if not in their permanent homes, at least in something more transitional and more permanent than a tent. But that's not the case in many areas. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We possibly underestimated the sheer difficulty of operating in this environment.
But 6 months on, WFP was making the transition from emergency relief to longer-term recovery across the tsunami zone, moving to targeted food aid to help vulnerable groups not only recover, but to rebuild even stronger communities. School feeding programs make sure students receive the nutrition they need to keep them in school and give families a chance to educate their children. Food for work and training programs ensure families don't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from, so they can focus on rebuilding their homes and livelihoods. Jesurama is learning carpentry so he can better provide for his family.
It's not about providing food only. Food alone can't do, so much. But that's about providing other assets to these people. These other assets are, better education, better access to health facilities, and all the partnership that we have created this year towards recovery have only one focus, is to help the communities helping themselves.
In Indonesia and Sri Lanka, the countries hardest hit by the disaster, there are enduring needs of victims who still do not have homes, still do not have jobs, still do not have a way to earn a living, to survive. And for those people, WFP will still stand with them in their communities, providing assistance.
A year on, there are signs of improvement. People are resuming their livelihoods, communities are reforming, and there is a sense of hope despite the enormous tragedy. After the tsunami struck, 40-year-old Wismaryani ran back 3 times to rescue her 8 children. She and her family have since returned to the remains of their home and are starting to look towards the future.
Sekarang udah ada jaduk kan, jadi modal jaduk itulah saya jadi modal untuk jualan, untuk cari makan untuk anak-anak nih.
And in the camps, at least for some, a new cycle has begun. Fatin continues to make her rounds, checking in with the women. On this day, good news, a healthy newborn boy for a mother who lost 6 children to the waves. Chalang is slowly coming back to life as goods flow back into local markets and people resume their daily routines.
What have we been able to find out about the prices?
Gregory's still here, working alongside his Achenese colleagues to oversee Chalang's recovery.
I don't know what Chalang was like before the tsunami, but I would presume that it was a beautiful place, and I like to see much of that coming back. I like to see a lot of the people in the community becoming self-sufficient, but then of course it means that we won't have to be here by that time.
The way they've handled this tsunami and the terrible losses suffered has been admirable, really. If they're given the chance, and if they're given a little bit of assistance, they'll make the most of it themselves. And I think they've got a very bright future, provided they can get the environment they need to flourish.
We, as a top priority, are focused on further improving our emergency response mechanisms. And that for me is the greatest lingering, enduring impact of the tsunami, other than the mental or visual images of my mind, in my mind, of the victims, the survivors, their communities. It's a legacy of how can we do better next time.